So, greetings again, and welcome to our second AGM for the BCS EMBRACE Special Interest Group here in London. I'm Unzube Ufodike, founding chair of the BCS EMBRACE Group, and I've got my fantastic committee here. The purpose of the AGM is to do a couple of things. It's a formal event, and we are recording this, as you know. We want to share progress over the last 12 months. There are some administrative activities around elections. We have a couple of members up for elections for a couple of positions. And obviously there's a call out to you, the members of the public, those within the BCS community and external to the BCS community that would like to engage with the BCS EMBRACE group. After this AGM, which should take about 30 to 40 minutes, there'll be an event, Keeping It in the Family, Keeping IT in the Family, which would be, again, hosted by my colleagues within the committee. And each individual will get the opportunity to talk a little bit more about their motivations for joining the BCS EMBRACE group. You get to learn a bit more about what we've done on an individual basis and what we plan to do on an individual basis to contribute to making IT better for all. So to kick off, the first is apologies for absence. We have a couple of absences today. Charlie Fadden, who is our vice, is on holiday. So we also have an absence from Wilfred, our outgoing inclusion officer. And with that, we can move on to the second item on the agenda, which is the chair's report. So the chair's report is normally a bit of a monologue, but I'll try and make it as interactive as possible. And if anyone has any questions at any point, please feel free to interrupt and I'll respond to that. So to summarize, the year gone, it's been a real privilege for us at EMBRACE to be able to have made some changes to the IT community as a whole. For us, it's always one of those moments when you look back at the year gone and you stock take items that you've actually done, it looks a lot more impressive than when you're actually going through them. When we began the year, we launched the Embrace New Talent, which is a flagship program to support 16 to 24-year-olds who are Black and brown and have any other socioeconomic barrier to getting a role in IT or progressing within a role in IT. So we worked with the Department for Education within the BCS to set criteria around this, and we launched this program in the first quarter with a couple of students to trial this out. This went really well. The support given to those individuals comes in financial and non-financial support. So the financial is money they can use to either buy equipment, books, or items to support their learning journey or their career journey. And the non-financial involves some access to programs, courses, and activities that would help them sharpen their craft. Embrace New Talent also works closely, as I mentioned, with the Department for Education. And the broader umbrella for the program is called My Digital Futures. And through that, we secured a lot of money from a corporate sponsor who is committed to supporting change in the IT sector and making it a lot more inclusive. We had a launch event at their offices in the summer to mark that particular milestone. It was very touching. For those of the committee members that were there, it was an event where we listened to testimonies from students who had been through mentorship, and they talked about how life-changing it was. It was quite interesting. I remember this particular participant talked about how all they wanted was a space to study. At home, they lived in a household, not too many bedrooms and not enough study space. But coming out to the office of that particular corporate, they were able to spend time studying uninterrupted And through that process, just coming out every day to have a quiet place to study, they were able to get excellent grades at the GCSEs, and they then ended up getting offers to, I forget if it's Oxford or Cambridge, to study a computer science program. So that mentorship and creating space for people to do what they need to do makes a real difference. In May, we held a hybrid fundraising and innovation workshop. This was in partnership with the WIRA UK, which is a corporate innovation department of Telefonica, the global telecoms company. And in that session, we delivered a masterclass in fundraising for tech startups. There was also a keynote by a private equity specialist who gave us a lot of insight on how to think about fundraising and how to think about innovation when running your company. It's not just about tech innovation, there's also business model innovation and other aspects to scaling your company that doesn't always involve capital injection from external capital providers. We also had a very insightful panel with a VC, an R&D tax expert, and an ecosystem player who talked about different aspects of generating revenues or generating cash flow from investors. There was also an awards and a competition that was announced by MSD UK, the Supplier Diversity Program, and they were inviting participants to apply for the new acceleration program. So it was a jam-packed day. And I joked on LinkedIn about how we got a lot of positive feedback, and it was perhaps due to the insight shared, but I think the food had a role to play with that. In the summer, we also took on our first pair of interns at BCS EMBRACE with Kamal, who led a lot of the mentorship. It was actually quite an engaging process. The interns learned a lot. There were two individuals, one in the first and another in their foundation year at university, who spent time with us, supporting us with various initiatives that we had underway. And for them, it was obviously a very powerful growth opportunity. They did send messages afterwards to thank us for it. And we used that process to do a few critical things, like create a DE&I calendar that we shared with the BCS. We also ran a couple of social media campaigns through the summer that were executed and supported by the interns. In the summer, we were also invited to participate in the UK IT Awards and be part of a process of judging. So a couple of committee members, myself and Vice Chair Charlie, were judges on a couple of panels. And it's quite, for us, it was quite a humbling moment, because a couple of years ago when we started out to EMBRACE, one of the things we mentioned was how we wanted to be part of celebrating talent and curate awards and activities that would highlight people that are doing great things. We quickly put that idea on pause because we realized how expensive it was to run an awards show from scratch, you know, the whole curation, the listing, filtering, etc. So it was a kind of full 360 to come back, to be invited to participate at the very prestigious UK IT Awards. The actual awards ceremony took place in November, and my colleague Kamal was able to join, and it was quite a prestigious affair. But the process of judging and supporting with the selection of winners from a very talented bunch of people across various pillars, you know, from programming to business analysis, inspiration, and innovation. There are so many categories we selected candidates for, and it was a privilege to be part of that process. And just a few more points around things we did in the past year that I'd like to share. In the autumn, it was also quite exciting to meet with the new CEO, and welcome him into the BCS. It wasn't our first time meeting him because if you recall, a couple of years ago, we did some work during Black History Month where we reached out to quite a few corporates, and we worked with, we did engage with a couple of the employee resource groups at IBM, and Rashik was actually the chair of one of those ERGs at IBM. So we did have a really good conversation, and he remembered us from that time we had that conversation and pitched BCS EMBRACE, and he was very keen to engage with us then. Fast forward to a few months ago when he joined, we reconnected and he was just as passionate. And he made a lot of commitments to supporting or doubling down on DE&I initiatives within the BCS. So that was fantastic. And then Black History Month this year, we had in-house Spike Lee work with an external video content editor to create a series of videos, which I'll play for you in between this AGM and the event. So we created 4 videos themed around Black History Month. So we talked about, me and colleagues talked about what Black History Month means to us, what words come to mind when we think about Black History Month, you know, what changes we'd like to see in wider society on the back of, you know, that whole equality and equity drive. And also on a more personal note, like who inspired us to make certain decisions in our own IT careers. So it was a range of conversations, short sort of 2-minute videos we put out with good reception from the BCS and the public when they were posted in October 2022. So we set a much higher bar for Black History Month this year. I look forward to seeing even more. And finally, it would be remiss of me not to thank the committee members, most of who are actually on this call. So I'll just name them: Charlie Fadden, Vice Chair; David Lewis, Treasurer; Daniel Ikiyoyo, Secretary; Wilfred Obeng, our Inclusion Officer; Kamal Lakpuri, Industry Liaison; Obi Osai, Early Careers Advocate; Joel Baines, a Sustainability Lead; and Amechi Ogwefi, a Project Delivery Officer. Without them, we wouldn't have done a fraction of the things we set out to this year. So I'll pause for some questions before I play the videos. Actually, I'll pause for some questions and I'll talk a little bit more about what to look out for this year. And we'll proceed with the agenda and then the videos. But 2 minutes for questions. Okay, no questions. All right, so a little bit about what we plan to do this year. Coming up, we want to do a lot more amplification of the work we do behind the scenes. You know, fundamentally, we're trying to bring together the silos of communities within the IT sector that are doing amazing work and making a real difference in the lives of Black and Brown professionals in the IT sector here in the UK and internationally. So we've had very positive conversations with institutions like Color in Tech, UK Black Tech, and others here. We actually have one event coming up in 2 weeks with Color in Tech. That's a reverse pitching event. There, it's focused a little bit more around entrepreneurship and helping underrepresented founders who are looking to raise capital for their VC backable ventures. We're also speaking with NITDA, which is the Nigerian Technology Development Association, and looking to do some work with them around regulatory policies with identity verification and digital representation. So we will make some announcements hopefully in the coming weeks about that too. In the summer, we're going to talk a little bit more about the CITP education programs and how you as a professional, as an IT professional, can level up with one of these courses. So Kamal will be running the CITP education program in the summer, and we might also do one in the spring as well. And then we'll have a conversation around young people and young people engaging within technology, looking at it from early careers as well as from parents supporting young people in IT. So that's what we have planned for the year. Doubling down on what we've done last year, getting more engaged on the PR front to highlight the work we're doing within the public domain, because we tend to just focus on the work a lot more than we do on promoting what we actually get done. So that's the year to look forward to. I'm going to hand over to my colleague, David, who can talk through the Treasurer's report, which is the next item on the agenda, item 3. Thank you.
Okay, good. Thank you very much, Enzo. One thing we didn't do in your speech was to thank you for your efforts. So I'm sure on behalf of the committee, we'd all like to add our own voices and say it wouldn't happen without you. So hopefully we can replace you at some point. We need to make a plan to replace you. But we need to surround ourselves with a Zubi lookalikes so that we can do a good job. So Treasurer's report. It's an honor to be a treasurer, and it's not a difficult job, I hasten to add, because most of the accounting is done centrally by the BCS communities team. And we get a monthly report back saying what we have spent against the budget that they have preordained for us. One of the frustrations of that is that, unfortunately, the way in which they account for the activities of the Embrace Group doesn't honestly give a true picture of what we've achieved. Because whilst it very pedantically records any expenses we may incur and which we've submitted to them, it has no way of showing us the revenue side of our equation, the fundraising and the like, most of which gets billed out of BCS education or similar, depending upon which party we're talking to. So I'm afraid when I've published my report, all I've been able to list is the actual figures for the expenses that we've incurred. We had an original budget for the year 2021-22 of only a mere £800. In other words, the BCS commitment to Embrace, which one might have thought might run to several thousand, was actually priced at £800. I was not terribly impressed by that budget allocation, I'd be the first man to say. However, against that, we didn't spend anything more than a fraction of it. In fact, the accounts for that year showed that we didn't spend anything, which is absolutely false, because some of us put our own hands in our pockets several times to fund events which, for one reason or another, BCS felt were too social and not actually within their charitable purposes. So whilst we may have had a lot of fun, they seem to have a very rigid line about what is charitable and what is social, which I think they need to change. I would also say that for the financial year 2022-23, which is the second part of my report, they have now allocated as a budget which awards us £3,814 as a budget, far more significant, far more practical. But that also implies that we will generate a revenue contribution of some £2,800. As at today, I'm not aware that any of that has been raised yet, so in this particular financial year. So we have some tasks to go. We have a budget, we have money that we can spend. And at the moment, we're spending very little of it on the first couple of months. So, you know, there still needs to be some thinking about how we're going to spend it. But the finances are, as far as I can tell, in good order. And I would recommend my report to the committee for acceptance as being a fair reflection of what the BCS have accounted for for Embrace in the last financial year? I presume the report has been circulated.
Yes, the report will be circulated right after this. Is in the shared drive, but will be reshared after this. And thank you, David, for the Treasurer's report. I agree with all the points you've made, the salient points around budgets and
BCS is listening.
budgets and personal contributions. I think there are one or two outstanding invoices, and I might be guilty for one of them as well, that haven't been submitted. So you should hopefully get them in the coming days. But thank you so much, David. Any questions for the Treasurer before we move on to the next item on the agenda? All right, so the next item is the election time. So we have a couple of roles up for election. You can see from the minutes, from the agenda that was circulated earlier, the first role up for election is the inclusion officer. So we have our outgoing inclusion officer, Wilfred Obeng, stepping down, and up for election is Kamal Lakpuri, who is leading on industry liaison thus far, but has agreed to step up to support us as our inclusion officer. So a quick show of hands, votes for Kamal to step in to the inclusion officer role. Cool. Cool. I think that vote has been adopted. Thank you. Thanks, Kamal. Do you want to share a few words? Thank you. Do you want to share a few words, Kamal, before we move on to the next vote?
Sure. Thanks, everybody. I'm looking forward to taking on this role because I'm doing something very similar in my current workplace. So I'm hoping I can strengthen the relationship with the BCS, with KPMG, and also advocate more of the Embrace group to get more members and everybody joining in, and also kind of taking forward the inclusion agenda to a wider spectrum of people. So thank you all for your support.
Brilliant. I mean, you've done so much already, and we look forward to you engaging even more, both within Embrace and the core BCS itself. As I mentioned earlier, the introductions to IBM you made the year before, and the work you did with the interns last year, it goes without saying you've been amazing support through this process. So thank you.
Oh, thanks. No, thanks to everybody as well for supporting and contributing as well their efforts. It's not just one person, everybody brings their A game. So I think that's really helpful as well. So thanks to everyone.
Brilliant. So the next role, we have the early careers advocate, Obi, who has decided to step down. And this is for personal and professional bandwidth reasons. And we will be nominating Chioma to step into the role. So a quick show of hands for Chioma's nomination as early careers advocate, please. Brilliant. So that's adopted, Chioma. Would you like to share a few words?
Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here this evening. Thank you for electing me, and I look forward to serving the community, working with BCS EMBRACE and all my colleagues here. So thank you once again for the election.
Thank you, and thank you for accepting this. Before we let Obi go, I'll let him share a few words, but I also want to thank you, Obi, for bringing your youthful energy and being our man in the north through your time with us at Embrace for the last couple of months. So I know I speak for all when I say we're sorry to see you go, but I know it's for good reason. So I'll let you take the floor, please.
Thanks, Nzube. Can you hear me? Yes. It's been a great time with everyone, with the committee members, and in all the initiatives that we've sort of tried to push forward as well. I'm very, very sure that Chioma is going to do a great job at this role. I think there are a lot of exciting things in the pipeline, and I'm looking forward to speaking to her to share some of those things as well. I think the early careers advocate role is very, very unique to me as well. in representing the views of, you know, not just younger people in the early stages of their careers, but, you know, when you speak about the early careers advocate, it could also represent, you know, older people who are sort of coming into the industry. So anyone in the early stage of their career in the IT industry, it is sort of this role's primary responsibility to understand that those different perspectives and represent them in the group. And, you know, it's a role that, you know, touches my heart. So it's sad to go, but it's been a great time, and I think there've been great connections, and I look forward to contributing to Embrace in any way I can in the future. So thanks everyone. It's been a great time.
Thank you, Obi, and thank you, Chema. And the final item before any other business is assignment of specific roles. We don't have any, but this would normally be other individuals that are looking to step up their volunteering and engagement with the BCS EMBRACE group. So just real quick, I'm going to share a link in the chat to read more about the volunteering roles that are available. And if anyone would like to know more, please feel free to DM me, and we can take it offline. We're always looking for people who would like to make the IT industry a lot more inclusive. So the final item is any other business. So I'll just go round, and if anyone has any items they'd like to raise, please indicate by raising your hand, and we'll pass the mic on to you. If there's no other business, oh, sorry, Daniel, any other business? Over to you.
Yeah, hello, apologies, I'm in transit at the moment, that's why I've got my camera off. Well, it's not so much a question, it's just to really say thanks to everyone so far this year for the great work. And also, you know, just to say a lot of the work we do, I know people are like the, you know, youth who volunteered, helped us with us. I mean, so if you want to quantify that, I think that's a lot of money to BCS EMBRACE. In terms of money, either we don't have to pay out our salaries or pay out to people or whatnot, which obviously couldn't get reflected on the finances or accounting. But I guess a lot of money has changed hands in kind. So I don't know how that could be reflected or that could be quantified, but yeah, I'm sure we've enriched quite a lot of people's career, a lot of people's souls, a lot of people's spirituality, you know, and everything else. So just to really say, great work to everyone at BCS EMBRACE and BCS at large, and hopefully greater things this year. And I myself feel more energized to, you know, try and commit more of my time this year as well. So yeah, well done, everyone.
Thank you, Daniel.
Yeah, thanks.
Cool, thank you. Nazarwa, hopefully I pronounced that right.
Thank you. I just want to mention that I'm happy with this event for BCS. And what I did like to ask is about we as internationals. I mean, for me, I'm from Rwanda, and I'm currently passing out of my university. I'm in first year of IT. Yeah. So another thing is that I want to be like somehow volunteering and engaging with BCS. So I may need some information. I mean further information, so that I can have a good kickoff if it's cool for you. And yeah, I'll be happy to be one of the team. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Nazawa. Yes, indeed. I'll send my email address in the chat, and we can pick up this conversation afterwards. We're always looking to work with colleagues internationally. As you probably are aware, the BCS is a membership organization. We have representation across the world. NITDA that I referred to, its current sort of director general, he's fellow at the BCS, and he does make it known. He's an Anglophile as well. So when he's getting involved in political affairs in Nigeria, he does remind people of his affiliation with the British Computer Society. So yes, we haven't got any specific ties, as far as I know, to Rwanda, but I know that the tech community in Rwanda is what's the word? Is growing rapidly, and many tech conferences, startup competitions, and things around entrepreneurship are growing really rapidly in the region. So, and I recently learned of a slightly more strategic move by the administration to encourage more engineers and entrepreneurs from other parts of Africa to emigrate to Rwanda. So I think that was a clever tactic, offering people means to come into Rwanda and start their lives, encourage them to set up as entrepreneurs locally. So it would be great to connect with you and figure out how we can work together and do some practical things in your region.
Yeah, thank you.
We can have a discussion about the UK immigration policy at the same time.
Oh, okay.
You just had to go there, David. We were like, hi, you just had to. But yeah, let's skip that.
Thank you.
Okay, but no, jokes aside, no, thank you, Nazarwa, and I look forward to following up.
Thank you.
Any other business? Cool. If there's no other business, I'll just close in the last 5 minutes with a thank you to the committee and to all of you for joining this call. I'll play the videos that we created during Black History Month, and I think you might find some of it inspiring. So I'll just share my screen, and after the videos, we'll take a short break before starting the Keeping IT in the Family session at 6:30. So hopefully this works. What I'm going to do is, actually, I'll keep recording for now, but I'll stop recording after the videos play. So please let me know if you can hear this. Can you hear this? Okay, no audio. Let me.
Black History Month to me is a time of celebration, and really is celebrating our uniqueness and our contributions to the different facets of society. That is from science to legal to policy and to the communities.
Black History Month means to me a time of reflection and celebration of the contribution from the Black community in all walks of life.
It's a time for authentic visibility, and it's a way for people to do the things that can create sustainable, equitable frameworks.
For me, it's a chance to celebrate and recognize some people who are perhaps not often given the spotlight, who have had a big impact on a number of people's lives, but we don't always hear about it.
Black History Month to me is a time of the month set aside to focus on the Black contribution to the society. It's a time to honor the Black and reflect on history.
Black History Month means to me to embrace myself, my personality and my career.
Katherine Johnson, she's been the most influential mathematician for women in tech and for women of colour. Her persistence, her hard work and her triumph is something that should be commended for years and years to come. The second person is Dr. Rashida Harry. She currently works at AWS.
She's been influential for me personally with her contribution to society for the Your Future, Your Ambition programme. She's been nominated for many technology awards and influential women awards, and I think she is a true role model for women in tech.
Really interesting one. First of all, I'd like to list probably Victor, who I call Uncle Victor, even though he's not technically my uncle. He helped me build my first PC when I was about 14, and it just helped me look at a number of components and get an understanding, and yeah, just inspired my interest in technology. And then probably two of my other uncles worked in telecommunications, and I always found that really interesting. I mean, I've done a number of different things, but I always like marrying up tech with people and getting an understanding of how the two merge together and make things better.
So I would say one would have to be my dad. Could be cliche, but he's a scientist by training, and I like to think in very many ways I followed his career path, consciously or subconsciously. And then I would say the ladies of the hidden figures, that's from Katherine Johnson, Mary Jackson, Dorothy Vaughan, who were called computers at the time and really supported NASA's early space mission, as well as Madam C.J. Walker for all her entrepreneurial endeavors in the United States.
So two people of colour who've inspired my career choices would be Nelson Mandela and Malcolm X.
Sir Tom Ilube, legendary co-founder of one of the UK's first digital-only banks, sits on several boards, raised millions for companies, and has listed on the stock exchange. Marian Croak, over 200 patents to her name, including that for voice over IP and the text message-based voting system. Philip Emeagwali, founder of the supercomputing framework that's now used in supercomputing architecture across the world.
Celebrate, inspire, learn, communicate, and collaborate.
When I think of Black History Month, I really think about the keywords that encapsulate what it means to be Black. And for that, I would say bravery, I would say resiliency, I would say vibrance. That comes from our culture, our food, our love for music, but also our uniqueness in the way we see the world, in the way we interpret, and the way we solve problems.
5 words to describe Black History Month would be big, black, beautiful, bold, and brilliant.
I think colourful, amazing, energetic, and just yourself.
5 words that come to mind when I think about Black History Month: visibility, authenticity, sustainable change, equity, and inclusion.
Reflection and progression, triumph over suppression, strengthening, and one last one, beautiful.
For me, this is all about access. You know, there's a number of communities that perhaps have less access, potentially people from lower socioeconomic backgrounds, who I'd love to give the opportunities that I feel lucky enough to have had throughout my career.
To see an open dialogue with unconscious bias, and to provide mentoring and training opportunities.
One easy way to make entering into the tech world inclusive is removing names from CVs. Blind CVs, blind hiring, where if you have a name like mine, you're not prejudged or ruled out before you get an opportunity to be actually screened.
For me, I think what would make it more inclusive is having better networking and mentoring programs that really focus on people in tech, people of color coming forward and sharing their experiences outside of the organization that they work in, and to really, really strengthen that network that we can all tap into and we can look to and look for support and look for coaching.
I would like to see Black people move from consumers to creators. And for that to happen, I think of a couple of things. One, an increase in the ability to have the skill to actually be a creator. Two, access to opportunities to have our creations become mainstream. And of course, three, governance to make sure that our creations are really not kept within our communities, but that we actually benefit for generations to come within our communities.
So great work there, Kamal, direction. She managed the project, so round of applause to Kamal on getting the BHM videos out the way. Thank you all for your time. We're over by 3 minutes, but we'll kick off at 6:30 with the Keeping IT in the Family. So please don't go away, stay close, and we'll see you on the other side. Thank you. Yeah. Welcome back, everyone. I'm Unzube Ufojike, Chair of BCS EMBRACE, and this is our first event of the year. It's just following our AGM, and it's going to be centering the members of the EMBRACE committee. The subject is keeping it in the family, keeping IT in the family. Get it? And your host for this event is the amazing Chioma, who would talk you through the event structure. So I'll hand over to Chioma, who will share more about what to expect over the next 60 minutes. Thank you.
So good evening, everyone, again. I'm Chioma, and I'm the Early Careers Advocate here at BCS EMBRACE. And it's a real pleasure to have you all with us this evening. And so the running order of the program is there will be a panel discussion hosted by the amazing Joe. And the running order is that at 6:35, the panel discussion will commence. And then at 7:05, there'll be Q&A. And then at 7:25, there'll be closing remark by myself. And then at 7:30, there'll be networking. And then the event closes and finishes at 8:30. And that's the order of the program. And so without further ado, I'd like to introduce the moderator. And Joel is our moderator for this evening. Joel Baines, he's a sustainability lead, and he's an NED, a mentor, advisor, and COO. He helps join the dots, designing and implementing new teams, systems, and partnerships. He has enjoyed working in marketing technology, data science, entertainment, and government sectors. He likes being a catalyst, an evangelist, building relationships that help make stuff happen, and driving businesses and people growth. He has a passion for good people, good music, both kinds of football, and shooting hoops. Without further ado, I'd like to invite Joe. Welcome, Joe.
Thank you, Chioma. And hello, everyone. It's great to see you here today. And yeah, it's lovely to have all of our members of the committee here. And as Nzube quite correctly said, we wanted to get the opportunity, as this event was accompanying our AGM, to really celebrate some of the work that we've done and take the opportunity to introduce a number of members of our committee and maybe learn a little bit about the inspirations that they've had of getting into IT, to think a little bit about the role of the BCS and also the role that EMBRACE has played to date and some of the things that we're hoping to achieve in the future as well. I know we're quite a small group today, and we have allocated time for Q&A later, but I do want to encourage this session to be really interactive as well. So if there is a burning question that you have as we go through, something that's really relevant to some of the content that some of our team have shared, then please do feel free to use the hands up functionality, and we will try and feature that as part of our discussions today. I did think it might be a little bit interesting just to get a little bit of an understanding for those of you who are not members of the committee, just to see how many people were currently members of the BCS by using that hand up functionality. So I don't know if anyone feels comfortable with that for now, but I'd love to know. Anyone who is not a member of the Embrace committee, if you are a member of the BCS currently. Great. Thank you. Well, hopefully we can share some information about the BCS. I know that Nzube has put some of the links in the chat functionality earlier. So if you do have questions about the BCS, or particularly about Embrace and the role that we play within the organization, we'd be more than happy to share any further detail than what we've kind of discussed in the session today. So I'm picking up as moderator today as Dr. Elsa, who featured in the video that you saw earlier, is unable to join us, unfortunately. So hopefully you'll bear with me and I do it justice. But I thought it might be nice as a bit of an opportunity to warm up, to hear a little bit about each of our panelists today. Just maybe take the opportunity to introduce yourself, hear a little bit about your role, the company that you work for, maybe their geographic footprint and the products and services they offer, and then the responsibilities that you have within that firm, and perhaps how it relates to IT as well. So maybe we could kick off and hear from Kamal. How do you feel about that, Carl?
Thanks, Joe. Hi, everybody. So I feel like some people know me already on here, but I'm happy to share as always. So my name's Kamal Akpuri. I've been working in the IT sector for a very, very long time. And I've loved it. I have loved it since day one. I've loved IT when I was at school, and I just understood it. I don't know, it's one of those things that just clicks and you're like, all right, I get it. And so I wanted to really further that, but I focused on a particular industry. So I work in healthcare, and I know right now it seems to be a bit of a hot topic, but it's been pretty strong in my whole career. And through that, I've been able to kind of travel the world with these projects that I've been doing. So I currently work for KPMG. So last year, I think some of you would have known I worked for Infosys, but I've moved to KPMG now. So for those who don't know, it's a consulting firm. So they're focusing on audit, tax and consulting. But my role currently is around tech strategy. So really kind of pushing through the new concepts and ideas of technology, focusing on the healthcare and health and care sector, and also life sciences. Yeah, I hope that's okay for me. I do some other mentoring inside and outside of work and the BCS, and with my new role as the inclusion officer, I'm also the inclusion officer for the BCS group at KPMG, and we have our launch next week, so that's really exciting as well. So yeah, awesome. Back to you.
Thank you, Kamal. Wonderful to have you, and yeah, we look forward to hearing a bit more from you too. But I thought perhaps we could maybe pass over and hear a little bit from David now, who you've heard from in the Treasurer's report. I would love to hear a bit more about your...
Joel, you know I'm a fraud here. I shouldn't really be here on this basis. But it's quite interesting because, you know, actually Kamal's saying she's working now with KPMG. I'm also ex-KPMG as a banking consultant. I started at LSE doing an economics and accounting degree, having been brought up in Wales. And then moved into banking fairly quickly after a career in advertising. Decided that advertising was for salesmen and not really for accountants. And to me, banking seemed like the good place to be if you're an accountant. What I rapidly learned was that the way the bank worked and the way the bank was developing, even at those early days, and I'm talking here about the 70s, you know, was that we were into things like voice deal making, so that you know, deal tickets were coming out based on your voice instructions. And this was innovative technology at the time. That several of the banks I worked with, which tended to be the foreign branches of banks, they wanted to go through system changes, so they were modernizing their technology bases all the time, even back in the 70s and 80s. And I had to learn, as the operations officer and the accountant, how does this work? How do we actually change one system for another in a way that we don't drop the ball in the middle? So there's an awful lot of project management and program management that came in on the back of that. I then thought I'd learned enough and went to KPMG as a banking consultant, and they introduced me to a client who sent me all the way to San Diego to be the president and chief executive of his organization in America. So I was really flying at that point, and I thought, oh gosh, this is the life, living in California. And then by the time I came back from California after only 3 years, I had some of my colleagues, ex-KPMG, had set up a company called PMI Consult. And we moved into Russia and Central Eastern Europe, competing with the Ernst & Youngs and the Deloittes and the KPMGs for banking transformation contracts. We were going into these banks and saying, well, we can change your technology, we can modernize your technology just as well as any other major consultancy can do, because we've all got that background, we all know how it should be done. So IT now is then, you know, it was all the way through my life. It's been accelerating the involvement of technology, and so much now that banks very much would look at themselves as being technology companies first and finance companies second. Well, that's a major change during my career, and but I seen it coming, and I followed that road. And in a way now, I would say that most of what I do from a consulting perspective these days is about resourcing projects for banks in the fintech space. So if they're looking to make dramatic customer experience changes, we will step into the breach and say, well, you can't do that with your existing team. You need to bring in some real expertise. And people are remarkably reluctant to bring in the talent they need to do a job. And the great thing about my career has been it's been about doing this job on a global basis. One of the things you've learned is that IT as a skill and the technology change, program management change skill set is totally mobile. And whether you're working with Nedbank in South Africa, surrounded by South Africans, or whether you're working in Moscow surrounded by Russians, or whether you're working in the US of A surrounded by Americans, the same issues come up. It's exactly the same problems. It's exactly the same mistakes. And what we learned was to totally integrate ourselves into whichever culture we were working in. And that's what's so important in terms of the embrace model, is for people to understand that a great technologist is a great technologist. And it doesn't matter whether they're coming from India or they're coming from Africa or they're coming from anywhere else. If they've got the skill sets and they've had enough experience to understand how projects are run, they'll be a success. And that's really my motivation for joining Embrace, is to try and spread that message. You know, don't be blinkered. Go in there with an open mind. Choose the best people. That's what it's all about.
Brilliant. Thank you. Fantastic. Lovely to hear about that experience. I thought maybe that would be a nice entrance to hear a little bit from you, Obi. You know, we heard a little bit about some of the things that you'd achieved in your role previously, and I'd love to hear about what you do outside of Embrace and how that links into IT.
All right. Thank you, Joe. So my current role is it's a BA role with a focus on enterprise architecture as a vehicle for driving digital transformation. So the company that I work at currently is called Aspire Technology Solutions. They offer a host of technology products and services to other businesses, primarily in the Northeast and sort of stretching to Scotland and all of that. But cybersecurity, managed services, connectivity, cloud as well. So my role primarily is driving a program that helps the different departments work seamlessly. So that's integrated applications, integrated processes. So it's, in as much as it has a lot to do with the business architecture, it also covers like the technology roadmap of the company as well. So that's primarily my role from an IT perspective. I don't know if that sort of answered the question.
Fantastic, very much did. Thank you so much, Obi.
Thank you.
And last but not least, Daniel, I'd love to hear a little bit about what your focus is and the affiliation with IT. Aha, we still in transit, Daniel. I think we've got you on mute at the moment. Do let us know if things line up timing-wise for you. Can't hear you quite now. Oh, here we go.
Hi, how are you? Yes, apologies for that. I'm just kind of driving up across the country. So yeah, my name is Daniel. I'm the Gen Sec at the moment. And so yeah, I've been in fintech most of my IT career. So what pushed me to IT, I started as a civil engineer. So what pushed me to IT really was, I guess, the realization that there's changes going on even in the transportation industry, whereby you don't need bus conductors anymore. Now you're just about to make the tickets. And that led me to thinking, hang on a minute, there's like 50% cut in the workforce just by introducing IT technologies. So that was like a watershed moment for myself. So I transitioned from civil engineering to IT earlier on in my career. And at the moment, I'm a cloud architect. So I've done lots of programming, done lots of system architecture design. Well, I believe cloud is really the way forward nowadays. And I've transitioned to that cloud architecture role. In terms of motivating for IT, so my current passion is actually using IT as a means to alleviate poverty. So I believe IT is one of those few industries in the world that could help drive equality in terms of income across the world. So whereby you could get someone who lives, I don't know, in the remote part of South America, and someone who lives in Far East Asia, someone in Europe could access similar tool set and effectively do the same job and be well remunerated for it. So yeah, that's a big driver for myself. And I believe it works quite well across all strata of life. It's also quite forgiving age-wise. So no matter how old you are, you can get IT if you want to. No matter how young you are, I mean, it's regardless of your background. So whether you went to private school, in a public school, government school, are well educated or not. So I do believe IT is a key driver in the socioeconomic workspace. I do a lot of charity work, a lot of volunteering, a lot of mentoring, and like just kind of really helping to drive change within my immediate circle as well as a larger circle. I first got involved with BCS EMBRACE by first of all being a volunteer mentor to some, I guess, kids who were in the college age, introduce them to IT, work life, and those kind of things. So yeah, that's really brief history of my background in IT and what my motivation is in IT.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Daniel. And I think it kind of leads quite nicely on to the next question. And we have seen quite a lot of change, but certainly like one of the key themes for Embrace is for us to focus on driving change within underrepresented communities within IT. Daniel, you've talked about some of the work that you've done there in terms of mentoring. I'd love to hear a little bit around like the inspiration for getting into IT from each of our panelists, as I know that we've done so at different stages of our career and probably been motivated for different reasons. And I know, maybe we've touched upon it in a couple of instances there where we've seen that it might have been a good time to kind of change career. But yeah, what factors really led to you becoming interested in IT in the first place? And maybe we could start with you this time, Obi.
So, to be completely honest, when I was in university, the things that drew me closer to IT was the fact that I didn't have to wear a suit and tie every day initially. So it seemed like more of an environment that was, not to say that was strictly corporate in a sense. And the idea of flexibility also appealed to me. But back then, I think I was convinced I was going to be a lot more technical than I've ended up being today. So just to sort of go back into how I got into IT, I actually studied mechanical engineering originally, but for my final year project, I did a data science project. So structural health monitoring with engineering structures, but it used a network of sensors and like computing systems to process that data to predict failure in catastrophic failure in things like bridges or big buildings. So on that project, I was sort of speaking to my supervisor, like the programming aspect of this, the planning aspect of this, like what is it? You know, it's not core engineering, it's not mechanical engineering as I knew it to be. And then she told me about data science, and I started doing research, and I was like, this is what I want to do. Because originally, maybe I should have taken a year off, even if I was interested in the sciences. I think the exposure to the IT concept, like programming and what data could do. I think that's it. What data could do for in different instances and different scenarios. And the one I was particularly exposed to was structural health monitoring. And with that exposure, the more I started to dig into the details of, you know, how data could, you know, transform organizations, transform businesses, transform ways of working and just the way the world works. I think that's kind of what sold me and got me into IT. So after that, obviously, I got into IT through internships and certifications without sort of a natural background in IT. So I would say it's the exposure, just getting exposed to it and learning about the effects. I think I couldn't help but want to get more interested in it. And today, what I'm sort of focused on is digital transformation. So how, you know, data and technology could transform the way the world works. You see things happening in the financial sector with fintech blowing up, and it's just really exciting as much as it's scary. So yeah, I would say that's how I got involved and interested in IT. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, very much does. And you mentioned there some sort of certifications. Is that how you first became aware of the BCS?
Yes. Yeah. So my original role, I started off in business intelligence, like as an analyst through internships. Then I made my first opportunity in IT was actually as a functional consultant. But the organization I worked in sort of used our sort of knowledge in functional consulting to build products. So it's back in Nigeria anyways, to build, because you can imagine licensing ERP products like Oracle or Sage, it's very expensive because of the exchange rate. So we use that as a position to build products that are very relevant for the Nigerian market. So that I go into product ownership. And yeah, I started working with, I was working with a team, and the business analyst I was working with at that moment, she was so insightful. Like when I had questions about the market and things, she knew strategies qualitatively and quantitatively, investigating and how to sort of draw the relevant information for informed decisions. So I knew if I wanted to grow as a product owner, like I needed the skills she had. So I knew I needed to do a business analysis certification. So that was how I originally, you know, found out about the BCS, you know, looking for the prevalent organization. This was when I moved to the UK anyways, that provided credible certifications for business analysis. And, you know, that's how I got into got involved with the BCS and eventually got involved with the Embrace, and you know, here we are.
Fantastic, thank you.
Yeah.
And Kamal, I know we heard a little bit from you in the video about who the inspiring figures were for you in terms of IT. Were there any kind of like the particular factors that led you to become interested? You know, what's your first memory of IT?
It's quite a young moment. So basically when I must have been about, oh God, I must have been about 6 or 7, and my cousins all had like the Commodore 64 and all of that kind of good. And then they just let us play with it once, and they let us type loads of work, like random keyboard things on there. And it was just so exciting to see that. That was probably my really first memory of being able to kind of just see a computer or a computer console or something, and that kind of stays with me, because sadly that cousin who showed us that has passed away, so that I would always hold that quite close to my heart. But there was other times when, like, my mum, she's a teacher, and she taught his Punjabi, which is our first language, in a secondary school, but she would struggle to write some of their like English, and she had to write their school reports and stuff. So I would help her, and I was like, Mum, it's faster for me to type. So I would sit there and type her reports for her, and then she was like, oh, you know, Gamal, can you figure out how to print these on the paper? I was like, you know what, I think I might be able to do this. So, you know, and little things I would do, like I would print out onto like in a table in Word, and then I would put that in on the back of the mum's report, and I was like, oh Mum, this works. And then I would feed her report in, and then I would type up all of her reports for her. And even now to this day, she's always telling everybody, oh, you know, Gamal thought of this really good idea. And then when the reports would go out, she would get like the headmaster would come and say, oh, you know, Govinda, how did you do that? She goes, oh, my daughter did it. So there was always these like little things I would just manage to do. And I wouldn't say I was good at it. I just thought, oh, I could do that, or I could do this. And on one occasion, when I worked for my industrial placement, somebody I worked with, he was like, oh, I'm trying to convert or trying to use something in a PDF document, and whenever I would copy and paste this, it's going all skew. And I was like, oh, just do a screenshot. And he was like, oh. So like, there was all these little things I thought, actually, I'm all right at this. I seem to get it. And then, so yeah, there were these sort of little moments, like little light bulb moments. And then another time was, again, with my mum, because she's a teacher, we managed to get Punjabi, which is our first language, on the computer. So then we would type and create worksheets and stuff for her at school. So from an education point of view, I found it like really, really insightful to see how you could do so much with it in lots of different industries. And I think for me, it was that light bulb moment to be like, you know what, this is kind of good.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that answers your question, but there's kind of like my first key memory points of like, I was like, I got this.
Nice, very much so. And how about you, David?
Well, it's rather scary when you stop to think about it, because if you really want to think about the first time you're really introduced to computers, I was at LSE doing this accountancy and economics qualification, and as part of that we had a computer course, believe it or not, and they were trying to teach us Fortran 4. Now I don't know how many people around this table would know what Fortran 4 was, but we had a little set of punch cards, and we could go to the computer room, and we could get them, once we'd written our little Fortran 4 program, to run our cards through the machine, and we'd be able to choose a red house with a green door and a blue window or something. And that was the height of our computer technology at that point, that we were able to make this estate agent's program to select a property in the most basic and banal form. And if you dropped your cards, of course, you were in trouble, because then you had to get them back in the right order. And I mean, even when I went into banking, we were still running paper tape machines. Where there was a computer bureau called PCS, Paternoster Computer Services, based in the city. One of my jobs in the evening was to run the tapes down to the bureau so they could process them overnight. And I remember when I was at Arthur Anderson in the early auditing days, we didn't trust computer reports. You know, people would give us computer reports and say, there we are, that's the inventory for this particular business. And we would get some poor little girl to come in and using a comptometer with about 500 keys on it from what I could see, she'd have to punch all this information back to prove that the total at the bottom was exactly what the computer said it was. Because there'd been so many frauds by people sort of taking the rounding and the payroll and adding a penny to their own account and things like that, that auditors were very, very suspicious of computer reports. So that was
manual validation. Wow.
Manual validation of computer reports. Now, I can't imagine anybody doing that nowadays, but anyhow.
Wow. Perfect. Thank you. And Daniel, love to hear about your kind of, we heard around moving from civil engineering to cloud. What was your kind of first memory of working with technology?
So yeah, my very first memory was, hold on a sec, I need to get somewhere, be quiet, just give me a few seconds.
No worries. We can always come back to you if timing is more appropriate. Did sound like there were a few beeps there. Definitely be safe, Daniel. We'll move on to our next question, and we'll come back when time's right.
Daniel being in his car driving and doing that.
So I'd like to think a little bit around Embrace. We're now this was our second AGM, and so we're moving into kind of a more established era for Embrace. And want to thank each of you for being leaders within this team and driving forward in certain areas. So this is a two-part question, and maybe it's the last one before we kind of open up the floor to maybe some Q&A from those who have joined us. But I'd love to know, first of all, why you chose to become a member of Embrace initially. And then second of all, one big thing that you would like to see from your particular area in Embrace in 2023. And yeah, maybe we could start with Kamal.
So actually, Joe, it's because of you.
I knew that.
So it was actually Joel, well, yourself, who introduced me to the group. I wasn't really aware of the Embrace group, but I was aware of the BCS. That it was actually an email had gone out around some mentoring with Coding Black Females. So I think that's where we had connected. But I was really impressed by the agenda that the Embrace group was trying to address. It was really close to my heart, especially things that had been going on in the world during 2020. It was a very hard year, I think, from a COVID perspective and from just a human perspective around diversity. I think the agenda got really quite difficult across the world, not just here in the UK. I think everywhere was really struggling. And personally, I have godchildren who are African American as well. So for me, I wanted to make sure that, and for my nieces and nephews, that I was able to contribute something back to society. And I felt with Embrace, I was able to do that through something that was a passion of mine, was my work. I really enjoy what I do. And I wanted to kind of elevate that message through that. So that's why I kind of joined the group, and I was really impressed with everything that what was on the agenda. I think we delivered, and I think we're doing a great job of delivering more things. And for me, it's around, I've been a member for the BCS, and I've shared this before, for a really, really long time. I was fortunate for my degree to be accredited by the BCS. So I had the membership. I would go to their offices in Southampton Street, in Covent Garden, a long, long time ago. But I always felt like I was welcome, but I found it very difficult to speak to members of the BCS, people who would turn up for events and things like that. Maybe I was young, maybe it was I was a woman, I was an Asian woman. They're like, what's she doing here? Is she lost? Is she here for the teas? You just don't know. And I found it very challenging to build that confidence. And it's actually, and I mentioned this yesterday to Nzube, but it was actually through this group that I feel like I can pull a chair up, or I can kind of, bring my own chair if I need to, but I feel like I can now have that confidence to speak up about some of these issues, not just from a race perspective, but from a gender perspective, and from all elements of diversity and inclusion. And I think that part of what we do is not so much addressed in other parts of the BCS. So that's why I feel it's really, really important to keep this going. I could be a member of, I'm a member of the Women in BCS group, but I feel what we do here is closer to, for me and for my agenda, and trying to get that message out that we need to support people from all walks of life. regardless of whether you're male or female. So yeah, I hope that's kind of like, okay.
Well, definitely. And yeah, I remember our first meeting at that event, which was really fun. And I remember coming back and mentioning to Nzube that we've met. I also think, you know, a lot of things that you mentioned there fit very nicely with your new role. So congratulations on your election to the inclusion lead. Yeah, it's very early day for you, so you might not have completely formed your strategy, but I'm going to put you on the spot so far. You know, what would you say if there was one thing that we're hoping to achieve next year within inclusion that you would love to see from Embrace?
From inclusion, I think first, within Embrace, I think there needs to be more female membership. And I think we need to have more of a diverse community of members as well. And I also would like to see membership from other industries, not just those who work in the tech sector or something. I think we can really kind of extend that out. For me, IT touches so many industries, and I think it'd be good to kind of get some of that industry representation along with that diversity. I think that's really important. So yeah, I think that would probably be my first thing as well.
Fantastic. That's brilliant. Thank you, Carl. And Obi, I know that you're moving away from your role, but within Embrace, but definitely going to continue being a supporter and a friend of the committee. So, you know, just casting your mind back to when you first kind of came across the organization, what was it that inspired you to maybe join the committee?
So at that point, I had done my certification with the BCS. So I started to receive emails about sort of things that were happening within the BCS. And like back to 2020, that was a time that I feel caused everyone to reflect on their experiences within any industry or just being part of a minority group. So to be completely honest, I saw the email and I saw Nzube's name, and Nzube is Nigerian, right? So Nzube, 40K president of this, then obviously went ahead to, you know, talk a bit more about the group. And I saw that and I was like, so maybe this is where representation, you know, really matters or had an effect. And I think if it had been any other name, maybe I wouldn't have thought as much about it. So at that time as well, like I said, I had been reflecting about, you know, challenges I was facing within the IT industry, especially because I didn't go through the natural route of having an IT background, and I was trying to, you know, engage in the industry and grow in the industry, not only as a member of a minority group, but as an international as well, which has its nuanced challenges. So, you know, I'll be at home with my sisters and my friends, I'll be talking about these issues, you know, together. And it's like, we need to talk about this. We need to, you know, start a podcast. We need to do something to reflect and to represent these issues, so like it can be at the forefront of people's minds. So, you know, strategies of fixing it more from a solution perspective, right? And I think looking at that email, seeing Nzube's name, reading more about the group, I sat on it for a few days, and then I reached out to Nzube, and we had a conversation. I think after a while, he reached out back, and we had a conversation, and we spoke more about Embrace and, you know, what Embrace was looking to do. And that made me to start thinking about how I could add value or where I could add value. And I think that merged perfectly with the early careers advocate role, just because of my own personal experiences and the time I was at in my career, which was proposed by Nzube, obviously. So that was how I got into Embrace. And that's how it happened. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you. And look, I'm slightly conscious of time. We've run over by a couple of minutes, but David, I would definitely love to kind of hear from you in terms of how you first came across Embrace and what you're hoping to see within the Treasury role in 2023. And then we will open the floor, unless Daniel is, of course, in a safer position to give us a small update. We will then open the floor to questions, because we'd love to hear from those of you who have joined us too, and have the opportunity for a wider discussion. But David, love to hear from you.
Let's cut to the chase. And Zubi and I had been working together on the Central London Committee of BCS. I've always been on the financial services side, so I was also involved with the FinSig group, which is the Financial Services Special Interest Group. And that had been my way into BCS, was through the FinSig group, where I used to attend all their meetings. And I realized that I was surrounded by bright, intelligent people, and that was the great thing about working with Dalim Basu in the Central London. Here's a man who has got tremendous energy and the most amazing organizational and ability to attract networking connections and what have you. And then Zubi came across the same way. Here's a man who really has some energy in him, who's driving himself and therefore the whole project forward. So when they ran up against the problem that they needed to have someone who was both a BCS member and a qualified accountant, I was more than happy to put my hand up and say, yeah, I can do 2 treasurer's jobs. I don't need to be just doing one. It's not difficult, as I said. And in fact, it's more important to actually contribute to the message, because I'm a liberal Democrat voter. I'm proud to wear my yellow jumper. But it's more than just liberal politics. It's about liberal attitudes. And I'm a redhead from Wales. That's a diversity. There's a problem to get over sometimes when you meet people. But the problems that people who have got of color or of different ethnicities and the like have to get themselves accepted, to even have the opportunity, it's criminal, and it shouldn't be happening in this day and age. And if I can do anything to stop it, I'll do it.
Well, we very much thank you for all that you have done for us in role of treasurer, and for kind of guiding us through so far. So it's been fantastic, and we really appreciate it. Thank you, David. Daniel, how are you getting on? I want to check in. Oh, we got you.
So I pulled over somewhere now where someone won't honk at me anymore. I mean, how do I follow that David's wonderful speech there? So I mean, the way I'll just switch on my camera a bit. So the way I got involved in BCS, as I alluded to earlier, was through volunteering. And so volunteered, I think it was in Newfield Health, also a Newfield program. So mentoring kids up north and around the country. And so for me, it was more like I got through a friend, and then slowly working with the kids. It was more like, this is one of those things you do, which, do for a few weeks, you make impact on the kids, and you've done what you think you do. But then now, seeing the way they grow at the end of 6 weeks, so that's the first one I did. At the end of the 6 weeks, and then when they're giving presentations, I was like, wow, oh my God, just impacting 6 weeks in a young kid's life, going from they don't bother turning up for Zoom sessions, they don't bother responding to emails, they just really don't know how to communicate. I mean, they don't really know how to look in the eye to say something. You ask them a question, they look down the keyboard, type in a chat, post a chat response, and you're like, no, you need to use your words, you need to talk, you need to do this. And it was quite intriguing. And then at the end of 6 weeks, seeing them doing presentations, talking about their dreams, their goals, making friends out of each other. I mean, really standing there, after a while, you're starting like a very, very proud dad. And then hang on a minute, there are more opportunities like this to do all these kind of things through BCS EMBRACE. It was then I got introduced to BCS EMBRACE. And then for me, it was like, oh, wow, little me in my own little, I live in Southend-on-Sea, one corner end of the world, can actually impact lives all across the nation. And kids who I've not really met, who've grown on to do greater things, like, wow, this is really so empowering. This is really so fulfilling for myself as well. And then through BCS EMBRACE, that gives that platform to be able to do more. And of course, also giving me that satisfaction that, okay, you know what? I have a purpose in my own life as well, other than just working, feeding myself and my family, actually making impact in the world in your own little way. So that's what I believe BCS Embrace affords me the opportunity to be able to achieve. Otherwise, I don't know, it'll probably just be me in my own little corner, everyone else their own little corner, no chance for us to leverage on each other's skill set and be able to see these opportunities and be able to grow and build a bigger ocean of talents and pool of networks and change the world. So yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you so much all for sharing. I'm really keen to hear some more. But I'd also like to kind of open up to see if there's any questions from anyone who's joined us today. So kind of moving into more Q&A session. Let's keep it fairly freeform. So please feel free to either ask questions in the chat and I will read them out, or if you'd like to kind of join and ask them yourself, you'd be more than welcome to as well.
I've got a question, Joel.
Sure thing.
Do you ever do a late night radio program?
Well, once upon a time, once or twice, I have played some music and done a bit of voiceover in late night.
Old grey whistle test. I can't quite pick the voice, but I think it's called Peel. I can't tell. Maybe it's John Peel.
It certainly wasn't national. It was very, very local, should we say. How about anyone else? I actually just realized that I didn't have the chat window open, so I wasn't going to pick up on anything there, but I do now. Bit of discussion on Fortran. That was good to see. Chairman, I was thinking, and I don't want to put you on the spot too much, but also we did, have the opportunity to hear from some of our other members, and also love to, I know you've joined us fairly recently. I'd love to hear a bit about your journey and what inspired you to join the group.
Okay. Well, you've definitely put me on the spot, Joe. So you definitely put me on the spot. I think I was just trying to think what inspired me to join BCS and Embrace. I think met Zubay when he worked for Wyra. Is that the right name? I think it's Wyra, yeah. As part of a group of leaders, founders from the Black community who had gone to Wyra actually. And then sort of seen, also volunteered with Coding Black Females, and then saw Embrace. And I think it's a bit retired to me, or retired, I don't even know how it worked, but yeah, here I am. But what's really exciting about my role is that I've got a son who is, he'll be 18 next month, and he's really passionate about going into tech. And he reminded me of my earlier passions for tech in the IT industry. So I'm looking to sort of transition as an early career in tech. But he's also going in, so he's starting a degree apprenticeship in the summer or in the autumn, and he'll be going to study sort of software development. So in a way, I feel like it's a great role to be in, because I'm sort of in it and I can support others, but also get more young people like my son's age who are really passionate about technology, but also really share with parents the opportunities that are there. Because I think in our community, especially in the Nigerian community or in other communities as well, I'm sure, Kamal, you can probably relate. Most parents want their children to be doctors, lawyers, and engineers and accountants, and don't really think about things like tech. So really, I want to advocate for parents to really think about getting their children in tech, because they can actually earn probably more money than those doctors and those engineers. So yeah, so that's a little bit of my journey.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, no, it's very funny. That reminded me very much of a conversation that I had with my grandmother when I was, she asked me, are you going to university? And I said, I think so. And she said, what are you going to do? And I was like, I think, and I went to study politics, which is not related to IT and hasn't necessarily driven too much of my career choice other than the things very early on. But she said, why don't you do a proper degree like law or medicine? And I was like, oh, okay. But I didn't. And so far, I've been enjoying my journey, but maybe I'll have a change a little bit later on. We'll see. I thought, yeah, it was maybe the opportunity to like look a little further into the future with Embrace. You know, 2023 is big year. We saw a lot of change last year. We didn't really get to meet face to face at all, maybe once or twice over the course of the year, which was really fun. And, you know, we've looked at a number of events to kind of align with those core pillars that we have as an organization of areas that we're hoping to impact for our benefactors. And so, yeah, I was just kind of thinking, you know, are there any themes, anything that we've seen, you know, it's very early in the year, but anything that we'd like to see in 2023 that we think that we can make an impact on at Embrace?
I definitely think for me, I'm just thinking about running an event where we can get parents to really think about careers in tech, parents, but also young people who are thinking about options, GCSEs, A-levels, and really get them to consider that. So I think that's something that I'm really excited to do. So yeah.
Definitely. It feels like, you know, my children are 10 and 8, and it definitely feels like a very different kind of setting and use of technology than when I was a part of the education system. Just the things that they seem to be able to pick up. I'm not sure if it's been taught or if it's just that, you know, we've got such great user experience and, yeah, functionality that's there. But yeah, it's a completely, yeah, it's wonderful to see. And it makes me feel like I need to keep learning all the time in order to be able to keep up.
Absolutely,
David.
absolutely. Sorry, I was just going to say my younger son is 10, so I can relate. And, you know, they're digital natives, so they know how to navigate things that, you know, took us a long time to get there. So yeah, I agree.
Thank you. David, I just spotted your message that I see you have another event at 7:30. So, you know, if we don't get the opportunity, if we're deep in conversation and don't get the opportunity to say goodbye, I did just want to jump in now and say thank you so much for joining us and sharing. Yeah, it is clear, A, the impact that you've had for us as an organization, but B, the passion that you show for our message and our values. And we really do appreciate everything that you do.
I want to pick up on something Chioma just said, which I think is important, which is to recognize that, you know, as I have, that learning is a lifetime thing. It's not something you do between a particular age range or something like that. You do it every day, no matter what your job is, no matter what your life experience is. You've got to keep learning, and having a passion for learning is a way to get, in a way, over some of the obstacles. And we need to encourage people not to think that education stops when they get their degree, or, you know, it's a different type of learning maybe later. You have to keep on learning. Don't allow yourself to stagnate. Always be interested in the change program. The point I was going to make earlier about, you know, how did you get involved in IT? Well, the answer was, when I was working in a bank and they were changing system, I made sure I learned the new stuff. I didn't waste my time on the old stuff. I spent my time learning the new, because that was the future. And people need to remember that when they're in a change program, don't resist it. Don't fight against it. That's a waste of time. Embrace it, learn how it's going to happen, and make sure that you're the one who is the knowledge focus in that change. And so that when you come out the other side, people will be looking to you as the guru on this new technology that's come into place. Don't let yourself get left behind. Keep learning. And on that message, I'd like to say thank you to all my other committee members. I'm afraid I have to leave you now, but I hope that we can get together in person very, very soon.
That would be lovely. Thank you so much for joining us, and glad to hear you're feeling better. Take care.
I've been to the death and back again in the last week, but I seem to be on the road to recovery. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you so much. Speak soon. Well, maybe that brings us on to a bit of a theme. Are there any particular areas that you would like to maybe learn or investigate in the next few months? Technology focused or otherwise, of course. But yeah, it'd be great to hear. I don't know, Obi, have you got anything on your mind?
Yes. So really, I think from with the whole early careers advocate hat on, even if that hat now is Choma's hat, so now in any case, but it's really just giving individuals in their early careers like a voice, because I think it's easy to misunderstand or not actually understand the details or the nuances in the different experiences from the different groups. So talking about people coming up through A levels, or individuals switching careers, switching industries, or internationals, and whatever the case may be, I think giving them a voice and actually sharing that voice on whatever platforms or events, I think it's very valuable. And just the second thing that comes to mind is, in a lot of cases, it's actually sort of shouting more about the qualitative and quantitative effects of diversity and inclusion, because I feel a lot of people don't know this, and you do come into some situations where people ask you to justify, okay, if they're confident enough to do so, right? What's this whole push towards diversity and inclusion in different industries? And I think that's a real indicator that knowledge is not out there as much as it could be. So why? What's it going to do for my business? How is it going to motivate the employees? How is it going to make it a better environment? How is this going to help the technology? How is this going to help the market? How is this going to help the value in the product in itself? So really get into those finer details and being able to validate it and show figures about that would be very valuable. I kind of picked that up from one of the events I went to last year in Manchester, where there was a research study that, in its own way went into validating some of these challenges from millennials in the industry. So I was just thinking, people like data these days. Everyone wants to justify something with data. So, if that's what they want, let's give them that. Let's justify what they need to see from a perspective they can understand, from a business perspective. How is this going to affect the bottom line? How is this going to help the resources? If we change the argument to that point of view, so it doesn't sort of feel like, it's about the emotional part as well, which is very, very important. But, speaking to people in the language they understand, I don't know if that sort of makes sense. But
yeah, definitely. Thank you. I just glanced at the time actually, and I noticed that we should be moving to a closing remark and then into some networking, if that works for people. So I wasn't sure if that was Chemo and Zube offering the closing remark.
It's me. So yeah, just want to say thank you, Joe, for stepping in and moderating the panel. So yeah, really want to say thank you. Big shout. And yeah, so closing remarks myself. And so a few sort of things that I jotted down. I think what was really apparent was the importance of things like representation. I believe all the panel members referred to that, and that's really, really important, really key. You can't be what you can't see. And so really important for us that the work that we're doing at Embrace is really important to help young people coming into tech space to see representation. And also what David said, to keep learning, keep being lifelong learners. I think that's really, really important for us. And then Daniel mentioned mentoring and giving back. And I guess that's part of what Embrace does as well, which is really exciting. So yeah, really excited to be in committee and work alongside all my committee members. And I would like to hand over to Zube for the networking section.
Thank you. Yeah, I enjoyed that break, and yeah, fantastic panel. Thank you, Chioma, for hosting the segment, and thank you, Joel, for moderating the panel, and to all the committee members for sharing your personal stories. It gave me goosebumps lots of times, but yeah, thank you. The work you do is really not just seen, but appreciated. So